Hi guys, you have already seen character, so now next we are moving on to the plot. So we find in a novel without a plot is useless actually. So a novel needs a plot. So we're going to study about plot today, okay? So why is plot very important in a novel? So what is plot? A plot is the particular order in which an author has chosen to arrange the event of the tale. So it is a particular order. How is it a order? We find there's a big difference between story and a plot. What is a story? A story is the chronological order in which those events would have happened. So, a story, we have an exposition, then we have the rise and fall of the novel, then we have the climax of the novel, and finally, we have the denouement or the end of the novel. So, a story is the construction work of how each event has to take place. So, a plot comes only between in the middle during the climax where there's a twist and turn in the story. So there's a two different plot and story is two different things. So what is a plot? A plot is the order of events in which they appear in a tale, and a story is the chronological order in which those events would have happened. So the next topic, plots and knowledge. Plots provide readers with knowledge. Yes. So plots, they do provide knowledge to the readers. How? When we read a novel, at the beginning we will find out that the author basically he introduces the place, he introduces the character, he introduces the setting, the landscape, and all those things at the beginning of the novel. So as the novel progresses, we learn about the characters, we know certain things about them, we don't know certain things about them. The writer knows, like, what are the things that he should tell about a character and what are the things that he shouldn't tell about the character. So certain weakness of the hero will not be told at the beginning of the novel. We will only know the name and maybe few characters of the character himself, but other than that we will not know anything else. So as the novel just progresses, when they come to the plot, there will be a twist, or there the author will reveal the real character of the hero. Maybe at the beginning the author would have just showed us the hero as like a very genuine person or a very good person. Not only the hero, maybe any of the character for that matter in the novel. But when it comes to the plot, only then there'll be a twist. We will know the real, maybe the person who we thought was good would be bad, or the person we thought was bad would turn to be a good person. So there's always a twist. So the plot, so what happens here? So the author tries to give the knowledge of the character only when it comes to the plot. For example, there's a novel called Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So you can take any novel for this matter when you want to explain about plot and knowledge. Whatever novel you're familiar with, you can use that as an example. So in Pride and Prejudice, we see Mr. Darcy and Mr. Wickham. They are actually, towards the beginning of the novel, they have some mutual hostility. So in the plot, we discover the secret that there is something that the reader needs to know. Like, when it comes to the plot, we find out that Elizabeth, even though she had the pride, when she came to know about Mr. Darcy, when she came to know about the love that he had for her, she herself went back and she surrendered to him. So, and Mr. Wickham, whom we thought was courting Elizabeth and all that, he just walked away of the story. So here the author has brought in a big twist towards the story. So that is plot. So in order to understand how the events of the novel engages, we we need to distinguish the chronological order. What is chronological order? It is the story and the actual order in which the reader is acquainted with the event, that is the plot. So here we saw the difference between plot and story. Okay, so next, beginnings. So towards the beginning of the novel, what should we know? There are three important things that we should know: who, what, and where. Who is the character? What is the story about? Where is the story taking place? All these things we need to know. So that the beginning is nothing but the exposition. When we start a novel, when we read a novel, the first part of a novel is exposition. Exposition is nothing but exposing. Exposing means showing or revealing the very beginning basic things. So that is exposition. So the beginning of the novel goes on to do more. Okay, so the beginning of the novel, maybe in the first page we'll have only like about the settings or where it is taking place. It might be during the night, it might be during the day. And in the second page we'll come to we'll get introduced to a new character, maybe the first character, and then slowly the novel builds. So there are certain things that a reader needs to know, all of which are expansions of who, what, and where. So a novel is nothing but who, what, and where. We actually, first of all, we get introduced to the character. Then we start to, as we read, we come to know what the character is about. And then we come to know about where is this taking place. Who is the characters acquainted with, what kind of people around him, and all these things comes only after the exposition. So without a beginning there will be no novel at all. So how does, so when we're coming to a plot, after several chapters, maybe it might take 10 chapters or it might take 15 chapters, but only after several chapters will come to the plot. Okay, so the beginning might start be till 15 chapters or 16 chapters, it depends upon the novel. Okay. Mm. So, a section of a plot in which the basic conditions for its development are set out is called the exposition. So, what is an exposition? The section of a plot in which the basic conditions for its development are set out is called an exposition. So, the basic things of the novel, the characters, maybe the introduction of the characters, who what are they like, all these should be exposed, so that only that will build a plot. So without knowing anything, to direct, the author cannot show the plot without revealing any other things of the novel. So, plot begins by establishing the condition, the who, what, and where, that will allow the reader to understand subsequent events. The section that supplies this knowledge is called the exposition. So, next, moving on to disjunction. Disjunction is nothing but a break, a breach, and interruption. So, how can a novel be interesting? So, if a novel has to be interesting, there need to be some kind of a break, there need to be some kind of interruption, and no disjunction, there's no plot. So, in order to build a plot, the author always uses a disjunction. So, like, there's always a break in between the novel. We don't know. Maybe the novel will be smooth, we'll be reading it, and suddenly, if there is no event or if there is no sudden twist in it, will a reader read? No, he will not read. He'll not be interested in the book. Everybody wants something to happen at one point of a life. The same way in the novels, we need something happening. Otherwise, it'll not keep the novel interesting. So, in order to build the plot, there should always be a break, an interruption. Something has to interrupt. Maybe a new character entering in the middle, causing trouble or changing the whole situation will make the novel very interesting. So we need a disjunction to have a plot. Okay, so for example, in Jane Eyre, as the novel progresses, we find We find that Rochester is married. But before, when we read, when Jane Eyre falls in love with Rochester, Jane Eyre is ignorant. She doesn't know about the marriage of Rochester. She thinks he's not married. But only at the wedding day, when everything is ready, she comes to know about his marriage. So if that twist was not there, I think Jane Eyre would be very boring to read, and we wouldn't consider that as a some. We wouldn't even take it as a best novel. So if that twist wasn't there, it would have been so disappointing. So next, moving the development of plot requires a disjunction in the fictional world established at the beginning of the novel. So guys, when you're when you're writing your exams, I think it's important that you give your examples. It might be any novel for that matter, not only Jane Eyre or not only Wuthering Heights, or whatever novel you know. Use it as an example when you write. So next one is uh, in Wuthering Heights 2, we find that Heathcliff, uh, Mr. Earnshaw goes to Liverpool and he comes back with the child Heathcliff. So, if he didn't come back with this child Heathcliff, we wouldn't know this character, because Wuthering Heights, the main character, the hero of the novel, is Heathcliff, and without Heathcliff, there would have been no Wuthering Heights at all. So, in Wuthering Heights, Mr. Earnshaw, what does he do? He goes to Liverpool and then he comes back with a child, Heathcliff. The story begins with Heathcliff and it ends with Heathcliff. So the whole novel revolves around Heathcliff, right? So there's a distinction. So this is a distinction. There's a break. It might have been only Mr. Earnshaw's family. The author could have only focused on Mr. Earnshaw's family. He could have showed his son, his daughter, his wife, and he could have built she could have built it that way. But then what did the author do? There was a shift, there was a break. Suddenly boy enters into their family, that is Heathcliff. So this shows that there is a break and there's an interruption, which makes the reader more interesting. So when he introduces Heathcliff, all of us are worried. Who's this Heathcliff? Why did he enter into the novel? What is he going to do in this novel? So all these curiosity rises in the reader's mind. So that is very important, and its disjunction plays a very important part in plot construction. So the development of plot requires a disjunction in the fictional world established at the beginning of the work. Next thing is trajectory. So what is the trajectory? The moment of plot can be called a trajectory. So the way the plot is constructed, it can be called a trajectory. Okay, so trajectory means the path of the moving object. So as plot move in time, the term is appropriate to the events, the sequence, and the cause and effects of the fictional work. So trajectory does not only mean the moment of the plot, there can be also parallels. What is parallels? Like for example, there might be we find in this novel, for example, Tess of the Hercules. The heroine is quoted by two men. Okay, so the two men do not meet. When one man enters, after he finishes his courting, he just leaves, and then the next person enters, and they both don't meet at all. So that gives like that builds a curiosity in the reader, not only in the reader but even in the characters. And finally when the novel ends, when it comes to the plot, that is parallel. Okay, so the writer keeps the readers interested, he doesn't reveal it. So that is parallels. So plot as a journey. Next thing is plot as a journey. Trajectory is also the plot of a journey. Maybe for example, novels like Don Quixote, The Unfortunate Traveler, Daniel Defoe's Small Flounder, Huckleberry Finn. Mark Twain's, all these novels, they always have a journey. So, as there's a journey in the novel, we find every place, every situation, every moment has a different kind of a plot. Maybe the first situation will not be equivalent to the second. The third part in where the novel takes place will not be connected to the first part. But then when it comes to the plot, all of these things will come together and it will give a full meaning to the novel. So plot is very important, trajectory is very important in a plot. So because a plot moves in time, it is important to consider what drives it. Trajectory is usually term for talking about the various ways in which plot moments occur. Plot moments can be generated by parallels and journeys. So next, features of plot moment: looking backward and forward. So the first feature is looking backward and forward. So sometimes in order to appreciate the significance of what is happening, we have to look backward to previous events. If you don't know what happened before, we will not understand we will not understand what is happening in the plot. And also we need to look forward to what happened to the character or what was taking place. Two terms had been given to these kind of readings. First is analepsis. Analepsis is looking backward and prolepsis is looking forward. Analepsis is looking to backward in sense what is going to happen, like that. So looking backward or forward is something that we do. Like in a novel, we need to know what happened before. So looking backward or forward is something that we do. Like in a novel, we need to know what happened before. So we we start a novel, that it might be very slow and it might be very exciting and all that, but there's sometimes a twist in the plot. For example, in Robinson Crusoe, there's a happy family, they're just moving in a ship, and as they sail, they didn't know that they will have to meet a storm, and they didn't realize that they have to face so much of hardship. But it as time moves on, when they find there's a storm and thing, they all pray and they all want to come to the end of the storm, and finally they end up in an island, an unknown place, something new to them, and they start to live there. And so that is discoveries. So they just discovered as they move. The author is makes the reader discover the new plot and twist. Maybe when we are reading the first part of the novels, we wouldn't realize that there will be a shipwreck and all that. But as the novel progresses, we come to the plot. So that is a plot moment, and that's discovery. Next, reversal. Sometimes at the moment of discovery, what happened? The plot turns around, often with ironic force. Like some so it may not be like the author may not give you a straightforward plot like Robinson Crusoe. So they are just move traveling and there's a shipwreck and all that. That's a direct discovery, a direct plot. But sometimes the author wants us to have a twist and turn even in the plots. So the plot turn around, maybe like the moment you discover the truth, that truth becomes a lie in very few seconds, which makes it very complex. So there's a reversal in the plot. So, for example, we can find this in Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Okay, the return of the convict. occupies Pip's discovery that his benefactor is not as he had led himself to believe. So, in Pip never he never thought that the convict would return back, but then he came back. So there was a uh, even in the discovery there was a plot. What Dickens did in his novel. So that is reversal. So plot are so devised that readers look backward and forward to other events. The moment of the plot usually involves a moment of discovery, and this often results in the reversal of the plot. Next, plot, incident, and material. Thematic strands. Okay, plot. A theme is very important for a novel. So a plot comes along with the theme. Okay, so the theme, the author might have any theme in his novel. Maybe he might show the theme might be about death, or the theme might be about any like hospitality or any such matters. But yeah, in order to make the theme stand, what happens? A plot is very important. So next is reusing plot. Reusing plot is done throughout the ages. Every novel, every author is influenced by someone or somebody somewhere else. So this happened even from like the beginning. So many authors still take the plot still they take the plots from Shakespeare's dramas. They take it from all the old writers. The Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. So the Pilgrim Progress was actually it itself was based on Jane Eyre's plot setting. So and also we find Great Gatsby was that plot setting was taken from Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet. So all these there's always a reusing of plot from the old novels. Still today most of the plots are influenced. That is reusing of plots. Okay, so plot enact themes. There are several literary source of plot material, and that can be used in number of ways to enforce the thematic significance of the novel. Ending. Every novel needs to have a neat conclusion. Okay, unlike reality, in novels there's a satisfaction. The reader gets the satisfaction that the novel ends with a positive note, or sometimes maybe a negative one, but yet still the reader has that pleasure of reading. He or she knows that there's an end in the novel, that is the climax. Okay, so the climax is nothing but the conclusion, or like everything is solved, all the problems so far, all the problems in the novel has come to an end. So that is in climax. Okay, form of climax and closure. So this climax can be on several themes. Maybe it might be the death of the hero. The death of the hero will bring the novel to an end. Like in Wuthering Heights, we find Heathcliff dead. He's dead towards the end of the novel, so that brings a close to the novel. So after all those things, all those love with Catherine and all those things, what happens finally? Heathcliff is he's haunted by Kathy, and finally he's found dead. So that brings the novel to an end. Most of the time, the form of climax in novel is death. Okay, so in Great Gatsby, body of Gatsby is found near the swimming pool, and then his death by water in the novel. So this death of Gatsby in the swimming pool, it is done. It is taken from T.S. Eliot, The Waste Land. Actually, it's a Wasteland is a post First World War poem in which the fourth section is called Death by Water. So this theme, or this event is taken the Great Gatsby's novelist, and he has made Gatsby dead towards the end of the novel by the swimming pool. Okay, next, it can also be the illness. So how illness comes as a plot. In many novels, we find that the hero, or maybe the main character of the novel, he's ill, and finally, in his deathbed, he gives his honest speech, so which puts an end to all the trouble and all the situation of the novel. Okay, so illness, death, all these things are forms of climax and closures in most of the novel. Finally, there's a denouement and resolution. Denouement and nothing but the end. So denouement is a French word meaning untying. So finally, there's like towards the end, there's sometimes a happy ending or a sad ending, whatever it might be. There's always a solution, a conclusion. Everything needs a solution. So that is denouement or resolution, the final end of it all. Okay, so a story, first, what does it have? It has an exposition, then it has a rise, and it has a fall, it has a climax, it has a denouement. So this is how a story is constructed. But in a story, what is very important? A plot is very important. So what are we seeing? We are seeing the about the plot. Okay, so the end of the story follows from its climax. End can involve the death or the exit of the central character. Ends often pass judgment, and many of the issues and feelings are resolved. Themes are sometimes particular evidence at the close of a novel. So now next moving to a different short story. Okay, so now we saw about plot in novels. Now we are going to see about plot in a short story. So like mostly everybody can will have this idea like short stories are very easy to write, but it's not, because unlike novels, in novels we give the clear detail of everything. We give the detail about the place, about the situation, about the landscape, about the room, what does the room contain, maybe a table, a chair, whatever it might be. We give each and every single detail in a novel. But in a short story, the author cannot give the entire detail. It will not be a short, it will become a novel if he's going to give all such details. So short story is not that easy to write, and so we find that how plot constructing a plot in a short story is very difficult, because with very few sentence the author has to bring in a plot, and he needs to like have the beginning, the climax, and the end in a very short pages, maybe a 10 or maybe a 5 or maybe a 15 pages. He needs to finish the short story. So that's very difficult. So the first thing in a short story is economy. What is economy? Economy is the writer of short story has to make every sentence count. So simply a author who's writing a short story cannot simply elaborate each and everything. Suppose he is explaining about a glass, he cannot go on explain about it's the way it is, where it is kept, and how what is the design of it and all that. The author cannot sit and explain all that, because it is not a short story. If he's going to explain each and everything, he has to only reveal the plot to the readers. So that is economy in a short story. Okay, so narrative. When next moving on to narrative, in short story the narration has to be by one person, or it cannot be like a novel, where in some novels we find out there are so many characters giving different kind of narration in their own words. But in a short story that cannot happen. Only a single character has to explain the whole novel. A single narrator has to explain the whole thing. Okay, the next, theme and epiphany. In a short story we find that the theme and whatever the epiphany. What is okay, I'll come to epiphany first, we'll finish the theme. So theme, when in a short story, a theme, of course every novel, every whatever story, whatever genre of literature it might be, it needs a theme. Without a theme, it's useless. So even short stories need a theme. But in short story the author has to make it a point that with very limited sentence, with very limited use of all these things, all the like all the figure of speech and everything. He needs to make it very simple, but yet he has to make it a point to bring out a theme in it. So, like, for example of such short story is Jude the Obscure. Uh, like, I'm sorry. Short story is the what is it? Okay. The Face of Jude the Obscure. So in that in the short story, we find that the author, the novelist, I mean the short story writer, he just he uses very small little very short sentences, but yet he brings out how the face of Jesus was, how he used one character to show the face of Jesus, and also towards the end how that character had changed into Judas. So that is the face of Judas. Yeah. So how the face had turned to Jude. So that so where in very few pages the short story writer had made it a point to bring out the story, to bring out the theme, and also he had used all the things that a story should need. The exposition, the climax, the rise and fall, everything had just in very few pages. So that is the specialty of short story writing. Okay. So epiphanies, what is epiphany? Epiphany is inexpressible. So like a novel, the short story writers cannot explain everything in a short story. Like novels, you can explain everything, but in what about short story cannot. So sometimes it is impossible for the writer to give you all details, and most of the time it's left to the readers. Maybe you can build it up, or you can just read it for pleasure and go on. So the epiphany is inexpressible. The author cannot express it fully. He like inexpressible, it is actually sudden. So the short story itself, we don't know where, which time, or when and all, but actually the situation happened somewhere, some point, at some point it just happened. So that is how short stories are written. Okay. So there are different kinds of short stories, like thrillers and all these things. Like thrillers are there, then very short ones, like only giving us the main details and all these things. Like for example, Sherlock Holmes novels are thrillers, but writing it as a short story in very small events is very difficult. So in that, building a plot as a thriller in short story is way too difficult. So that is why plot plays a major role in short stories. Okay. So short stories are of various kind. Their autonomy often results in writing that works on several levels of meaning. The end often involves moment of illumination called as epiphany. So this is plot, guys. I hope you understood it. So what did we see? We saw plot, the difference between plot and story, then how plot gives the knowledge to the readers, then what is exposition? We saw that every plot needs a disjunction and trajectory, and then features of plot moment. The first feature is looking backward and forward, then discoveries and reversal, then a plot incident and materials, then coming to the conclusion, the ending, or the denouement. Then finally, we saw the short stories.